But the most impressive guy I ever fished with probably did not have $400 in the bank, who lived in a cabin on the river 140 miles from Ketchikan by himself, and he was in his early 70s, and I don't think he owned anything but what was in that cabin and what it took him to survive. But he was the most impressive man I ever met in my life. So one day we're flying up this river called the Unik. It's U-N-I-K. It was a big river, bigger than the Susquehanna at Harrisburg, but a lot more water and a lot of islands in it. And I looked over to the side. I was flying up with the pilot, and I looked over, and there was a long valley that went back, beautiful valley with lush trees and stuff and a stream. And at the mouth of it, there was a little cabin, and we hadn't seen anything for a while. And I said, who owns that cabin, to the pilot? He said, oh, that's Bruce Johnstone, something like it was President Lincoln or something like this. So who in the hell's Bruce Johnstone? He said he's a legendary Alaskan, and he told me some things. I said, and the Unik River is a glacial river, which it looks like 1% milk. It's got all this color in it, which is usually not good fishing. But that river over there called the McCormick that we were looking at was crystal clear. So I said, well, I noticed he's got a couple of boats. Would he guide us? Oh, I said, are there any fish there? It's loaded with fish. I said, would he guide us? And he said, well, I don't know. Mr. Johnston doesn't take many people. I said, you know him? He says, yeah. I said, well, would you ask him? He said, yeah, we can do that. So he turns the airplane around, and we're going over these little low islands. We come in, and the bottom of this stream is gray, and out walks this guy walking like this. Well, he had already told me why he was walking that way. And so he walks out, and as we come into land, what that gray was king salmon's backs. The entire river was covered with these things. And as we landed, it was like an envelope. They would move. There was king salmon everywhere but where our runners were. So we stop here across the street. We get up to the bank, and he walks down, and the pilot gets out and goes and talks to him first, and then the guy allowed we could get out of the plane. And at lunchtime, we caught all kind of fish, and we're sitting on a log. And I said, Bruce, and I'd already heard the story from this pilot. Bruce, how come you walk so funny? He started and he told us like you would talk about going to the grocery store. So during the past winter before, an old trapper friend of his came over and spent a week just to get to be together, and gave him some shotgun shells, which he did not know were defective. So Bruce said that, after asking how this all happened, he said he was out on some islands there where they got stuff called goosegrass, a long pointed glass. He was trapping out there, and he said, I saw a big boar and a big female and a little cub. And I said, how big was the cub? He said, oh, he was only about 600 pounds, which ain't a little cub. But anyway, he said, I didn't want them to see me, and he was almost apologetic. He said the berries hadn't come on yet, and the salmon hadn't run. So he said these bears were really hungry, and I knew if they saw me, they would try to eat me. So he said, I have my shotgun. So he said the big boar came in, and I shot him in the yellow patch and jumped aside, and he fell down dead. Then the big female came in. He said, I got down and I reloaded, put 2 more shells in. What he didn't know, he put those defective shells that the guy gave him. So he said, I got up on the bank after about 50 yards, and my boat wasn't far away. And he said, I'm running down on my boat, and all of a sudden the bear caught me. And he said he threw me down, and he said he bit hunks big enough to set coffee cups out of my back. He crushed my pelvis and some other things. And he told me that he sometimes goes 6 months and never sees a person. At that very moment, a friend of his who was a guide, hunting guide, was coming down that Unique River with two what he called sports, guys that were bear hunting. And they heard all the guns going off and the yelling and screaming and all this stuff, and they ran over and they killed the bear. Now the guy's got a crushed pelvis, he's got two things big enough for coffee cups out of his back, and he ain't said nothing about how much pain he's in. He just told his story like I'm telling it to you. And they rolled him over and they realized that mud had filled up these holes in the back. So they scooped the mud out, and he said, I said, God, Bruce, you must have been in terrible pain. He said, well, I'm never going to forget one thing. And I thought, of all crushed pelvis. I said, what was that? He said, well, they scooped that mud out of those holes and filled it up with whiskey. He remembered that after everything. But this guy was the most, and the way he told that whole story was just as casual as I told it here. And he lived, and actually there's been a book or two written about the guy. But he was the most impressive guy I ever met.